the hashtag Fees Must Fall is a movement. And if the viewpoints that are expressed are seen as the expression of a point of privilege, then there could be very real antagonisms to that view. And one could be vulnerable and under threat depending on the situation and the climate at that particular time. There were very, very distinct fears that were articulated in our last discussion, and those fears related to that this film footage could be used in a manner that is dangerous, destructive. This fear, which is called an entry problem fear in terms of negotiation rules, how can that be best managed? So
some people are a bit worried that future employers and things like that might find it and find that if you expressed an opinion that was counter popular opinion, say, either a kind of very left-wing approach, that they might not hire you. Let's say like a bank might say, we're not interested in this person, he doesn't follow like business procedures or something like that.
Part of the solution could be extremely beneficial as well. So there's a risk associated with all conversations, and this one in particular.
My fear personally is that words once spoken take on a life of their own. They are up to the interpretation of people, and you have no control as the speaker of that interpretation. Negativity is an exceptionally powerful force and very addictive force within society. Goes viral quicker than positive things, and that is a very big fear, because you can get your whole image, which was originally in a good place and you were coming from a good place, completely taken away from you and distorted into something very negative that you have no control over and you can't come back from.
Based on your color or culture, or whether you're a student at Wits Business School and not Wits main campus, no matter what words come out of my mouth, there could be assumption that whether it's just because of who I am, there will be an assumption that what I'm saying is negative.
What we're exploring is the matter of process, and process is crucial to discovering a solution, and if we ignore process, we're going to fail.
Maybe it was tougher to find a solution because we needed to go through the process first, and it was there in the process where we discovered that Fees Must Fall is not merely about free education.
The process is also not yet ripe for a solution. Is that a correct interpretation of what you're saying?
But I don't feel that we're at a place where ready for solutions. People still want to talk. People still want to get what's on their chest out.
It was so interesting to see where different classmates were coming from, and all of a sudden, like, a solution for the assignment for intersec seems more, real, because all of a sudden we've got a different view of where people were coming from and where people may be coming from in terms of their opinion.
Last time it was that unpacking of the complexity, and then the realization of, okay, it's not necessarily one solution, but many solutions. And the realization of going, are those solutions going to have the intended benefit, or are there going to be unintended consequences that we cannot foresee now? Because we don't want to create something worse in the future.
We tend to forget that parents also play a role as to how people express their views. Maybe your parents have sacrificed everything for you to be at school, and you standing for this movement is disappointing them. So you might not want to express your views or be seen.
It would be very destructive of us to ignore our privilege being here at the business school. How exactly does a Fees Must Fall supporter look like, and what are their actions? So I don't know my stance. Am I a fallist, as they call them, or not? So I feel as though I need to go through that process first before before my opinion is released into the public.
I believe if the movement had the same integrity and vision as last year, I believe that we'd have more corporates and great minds coming out. But because of all the violence that has been taking place, I don't believe there is a company that would want to support a movement like that and put their business name at risk.
It's just very pessimistic, because you're just kind of saying, well, someone else is doing it, we can't do it, oh well, they will come to something. And I think, you need many different ideas. We might come up with something, guys on main campus could come up with something, the education campus, government, corporates, they could all come up with one model and then bring them forward and be like, actually, okay, let's evaluate these and let's see, the pros and cons of each. I mean, there's no right answer. It's not like there's one solution will solve everything, because it's a complicated issue. We all know that.
If the solution is not addressed in the Fees Must Fall movement, it's going to erupt in another avenue. Maybe we're going to have a revolt in the working system where black employees, not necessarily black employees, there's a new influx of employees in organizations who feel as though they're shortchanged or the career ladder is not the same as their peer, or in other aspects, maybe government.
There's a problem in the lack of communication that we're getting from government and that we're getting from university leadership. The fact that we don't know who is working on these solutions is a very big problem. Let's assume that the best people are behind these doors and are thinking of these grand solutions, and we're going to get this best solution from the best people we can possibly find. Even if that is the case, who is actually going to go out and do it? Are we relying on government to do it? Are we relying on university leadership to do it? And who actually from there are we relying on? Because clearly we can't rely on on the people at the top who we're expecting to. Where by this time we would expect, our president to have said something substantial and made, some important move, which hasn't come yet. So who specifically are we expecting to actually implement this solution?
Is the university willing to look into itself to come up with a solution? Are the lecturers, are the people at the top willing to take pay cuts so that some of the money can go towards helping needy students? Is NSFAS doing anything? Can they be able to remodel the organization so that they can give more money to the needy students, because inflation happens, but the amount stays the same?
This course is about learning about negotiation, getting feedback on your own behavior, looking at a mirror image of yourself in communication, how your message that you offer is received by others. You've seen your analysis, and what are the correct next steps? How can this discussion be taken further to make it work and result in solutions?
We identified certain key stakeholders. We identified them as follows. It was firstly business, the universities through the VCs, students through the various student bodies, government through the finance ministry and the educational ministry, and labor, and perhaps clergy to play the mediator role. But the concern that was raised by some of our colleagues was that even within those stakeholders, they're not yet organized. So I think the first step is for business through various bodies, whether it's Business Unity South Africa or whatever, they need to first organize and identify people that will obviously bring forth their mandate. VCs as well need to organize themselves, because the universities are not speaking with one group, with one voice. Similarly to all the other guys. And then once they first organize themselves, we can set up a platform where they can meet and then discuss what the issues are. It's not an issue of competition. It's we're using a model where we agree on the mean, on the ends, but we don't agree with the means. And I think that's where we need to first agree that we all want this thing to happen. We'll then discuss the various models as to how this thing can be funded in a sustainable manner.
The starting point is that the diagnosis has to be correct. There needs to be an appropriate diagnosis by the stakeholders. And in your view, the essential diagnosis is that there's a broad consensus on the ends that are to be required, although that isn't fine-tuned and detailed. But there are large differences on the means. And this means is reflected in the stakeholder behavior, and the leadership of the various stakeholder groupings need to coordinate their constituencies. And so that there can be a consensus on ends and means in this negotiation process. Should it be started at just WITS, or should it be a national process?
Whether it's a state, whether it's the students, they'll come up together with one top, so that when we do that national platform, there's that uniform uniformity or that one voice that can be tested at the national level.
The ultimate response would be that this is legislated. Is that right?
Yes. And that's why we included government in there as part of the stakeholders.
A model which would relate to the fiscus and taxation and various state funding models. Then there's private model. Then there's disruptive innovation model. And I'm sure there are many, many more models. How do you think the models of the solution should be presented to the stakeholders?
The assumption that's been made now, we all agree, but that position has not been established yet. It's only those elites and people who have the opportunity to voice out their voices on the radio, given the opportunity to say, yes, we all agree, but that position has not been established. There should be one, not a poll because it's all opinions, but we all vote on the matter. And this could be done at a national scale. And we isolate the issue or the points, the issues that are actually causing this conflict. Because at the moment, the demands that have been raised, it's a long list. But we need to, as a university, come up with a position and highlight a process that's going to be a proposal to government. Who should be in those committees? Because at the moment, it's the government on their own, but they don't have the right people negotiating or even overseeing the problem. You've got the one that's been formulated recently, which most is looking at the protest, but it's not looking at the solution. The one that was formulated last year, already the chairman of that board is already given a position because he's already speaking against the Fees Must Fall movement.
Just as the university was prepared to have a general assembly and engage with the students, which was then withdrawn and postponed, it would be possible to have a national general assembly, and you bring all the stakeholders together and you say, right, we're not leaving here until we have a solution, and this is the way in which we see education going forward in South Africa. And you legislate that, and everybody is accountable to that solution.
Okay, so you're asking for a national plenary discussion, which actually gets ratified.
Everybody does agree that there is a solution. It's just the timing that's of critical importance. And I think if that gets discussed within whatever platform, be it a national shutdown, whatever the case is, I think it could be a step in the right direction.
Okay, so what we are having is a discussion about process. We're having a discussion about time. And in terms of the actual business models, we are having a discussion about substance. Those as items on the agenda would be very helpful indeed. The healing process, has there been such deep injury that there really needs to be a healing process? Yes, okay.
On media such as YouTube and so forth, what we see is that cops are coming in and arresting students. Where is the leadership of the universities? If people while they are sleeping, they can come to your residence and harass you and arrest you. Okay, maybe they arrest you for the right reasons, but it seems like the process of those arrests are not according to law. There's so much anger out there within the student community towards university leaders. It's as if they're not taking any action or they're not doing anything. And this is not only restricted to Wits University, also from our national leadership of government. There seems like there is no urgency to resolve what we're facing. So then how do we heal if students are able to march to Pretoria, to the union buildings, and the right people who are supposed to come there are not present? It just shows the attitude that university leaders and government leaders are taking towards this. Healing comes from reconciling, and you can only reconcile with the people that you think that are accountable. So you cannot reconcile with someone who has nothing to do with that.
That's fantastic. what you see is a replicated solution which could be applied in the different dimensions of the society. You see the problems as being systemic. You believe that the process of healing is incredibly important and has to be really wisely structured.
Healing never happened pre-94, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing today, because if you look at the way that we've been engaging as students, nothing much has changed. In terms of when we don't get reactions that we want to get, then we want to burn the university, we want to burn buses, etc. The government is actually the main reason why, because they were the ones who promised free education, right? Because they were campaigning and everything was good, so they wanted the votes. Now things turned pear-shaped. Now they know it to be seen. They just send someone to say 8%. How do you just say 8% and walk away and leave the universities to decide on something which you actually promised to the public?
Government needs to take accountability of the fact that this happened a year ago, and what have they done in this year to actually try and find a solution.
And then if you look at what happened today, we were surged as we were trying to get into class today, right? So that says to me it's not over yet. And for management to actually bring that as a contingency plan for whatever it is that they're expecting, management needs healing too. Professor Adam Habib needs healing from what happened when they went to the church and he got kicked out. Number one, the students need a commitment, all right? Not a commitment to say that fees are going to be free. A commitment to say that you're going to sit down with them and engage with them. We need just one day where VCs are going to say businesses, government, students, labor, clergy, bring them all into the Great Hall. Let's talk. Make it a national public holiday. Whoever wants to come in and sit in and listen to the debate, you're welcome. But over and above that, map out the deliverables from the various stakeholders for the day. So we are saying to the students, okay, you're saying that we have not listened to the solutions you have proposed in the past. Now we are putting them onto national TV. Let's actually hear what you guys have to say.
This might be seen as a petty issue, but sometimes what you call something has got a fundamental effect on it. Like, for example, Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist, whereas some others viewed him as a freedom fighter. So depending on which side of the coin you're on, it's got a different impact. So, for example, this thing of free education, calling it free education is misleading. It's not free. Somebody has to pay for it. So, because even the definition of free keeps on shifting. It's free for the poor, free for the missing middle, free for all. So it's not clearly defined. What exactly is free? What is the university committing to? They're saying we're supporting the call for free education. What do you mean by that? Government says we'll give free education. What do you mean by that? And then they say no, we'll give. It's not feasible. Can we just define what free education is, and can we all be on the same page in terms of what is this free education that we talk of? If it's going to be state-funded education, let it be clear that it's state-funded education. If it means it's depending on where you are on the income radar, then it's partially funded. Then let it be so. But let us be clear on what is it that we mean when we talk about free education.
I end up in prison. If I want to continue my studies, that will be paid for, and it will be free to me. Okay, but here a child who might have lost a parent as a result of my actions doesn't get that education. What are the wicked problems of not having an education?
When it's done in prison, it's included as a process of rehabilitation. You know, towards the end, when both the parties have actually lost more, for you to be able to draw them into a central place for the negotiations to be much more effective. Maybe free might create another bigger enema as compared to addresses the issue of capacity than free education coming last. Most people who are in urban areas will probably get much better education because they are in close proximity to most of the universities as compared to people who are in the rural. Then the segregation will start.
Looking at this entire process is so interesting how delicate this conversation is. And what I see with this group is that it could be a jury, in a way, a jury to offer advice on the feasibility or the stupidity of of solutions?
I think some of the people have already been tainted quite negatively. I believe that we do need to have more, instead of one big session, we have micro regional representatives that are elected. So that is very key, because the fragmentation is evident in the student bodies, in government, and also in other stakeholders. I think WITS as well is gone beyond a point. I think the healing part, it shouldn't be the starting point. I think there's a lot that has happened here, which has obviously taken to quite a negative and very violent element, and we should be cognizant that the next year is starting. So I think timeline are very key. We need to have a serious impetus to this. The national leadership is actually not here in terms of government. I think clearly they've got their own hands full. There's national problems at stake. But it can be an even bigger problem, because within a few weeks, actually, we're starting the next year or the next educational cycle. So it has been left for far too long, and we need a clear terms of reference as to what are the issues and also timelines.
Is it fair that the CEO of Standard Bank's child comes to school for free when clearly their parents can actually afford that money? Aren't you taking away from somebody who doesn't even have basic education in South Africa? There's problems where people didn't have textbooks. There's still children who don't have desks to sit on at school, it's over and beyond tertiary that is feasible.